Hello, I'm just testing this out. This is Justin McDonald here, and I'm here to pass down um, just knowledge and um, quotes, things that I find in books, particularly entrepreneur, self help, success books. Um, and it's given me the opportunity to share with you because I'll take notes and write them on like index cards and post-it notes, um, but particularly on index cards because it's given me a chance to build like quite a big file of very important, effective, useful methods, I guess you can say. Not just ideas, but proven and trackable success, I guess you could say. Not just quotes, but processes and frameworks that a lot of successful entrepreneurs used. And, through reading books and them writing the books, we're able to adapt some of the parts of their processes or maybe their whole process and create our own business. So before we go off into a tangent here, I'm just testing this out. I know it's very unprofessional. I'm not. Looks like I probably just rolled out of bed. Um, but getting this moving um, was very important to me. So here's where it starts. And I did write down the quote behind me. I'm not really sure if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay. I tried to test out a few pictures, and I did realize that having it in like a selfie mode versus just regular mode on a phone makes a difference because the things behind you will be all backwards. So I don't know if you can see the quote right there, but I'll read it to you. It's not like an official quote by Peter Thiel. It's just something that was in one of his books, Zero to One, and there's a good handful of books that I've pulled a lot of nuggets, I guess you can say, out of, and they're basically useless if you think about it, unless I can do something with the nuggets, like uh, better my life or better your life if you're watching. So it starts with quote I mean is every entrepreneur should plan to be the last mover in his or her particular market, and it starts with asking yourself what will the world look like 10 and 20 years from now, and how will your business fit in. I know I butchered that quote, but you get the point. How are you going to fit in 10 or 20 years from now? One way to look at that too is like look at musicians, for instance, not just pop musicians, because if you've noticed a trend in most pop musicians, they have a shelf life of 10 or 20 years max, right? Even if you're really good. Um, but look at more instrumental, technical, instrumental kind of music, like jazz or even jazz fusion or certain kinds of rock and blues and stuff too that is more on the instrumental spectrum. Not like saying anything against music that has lyrics and words in it. That's not what I'm talking about here, but I'm just saying that if you look at the longevity of jazz, like jazz musicians especially, I mean, even today, right now, you have jazz legends like bass players. Um, think of two bass players, Stanley Clark, and even a little bit older than him is um, Ron Carter. And I bring up Ron Carter especially because, I mean, he was playing with Miles Davis, and he was playing. He's been in just about. He's probably one of the most recorded bass players too, even in hip hop. So why I bring him up too is because his music has found relevance and transmuted time from when he first started playing. Like, so even today he's relevant. Okay, maybe not everybody likes jazz music, of course, but look at how, whether it was consciously or not, somebody is able to create something. I mean, music is a business too. And not just 10, 20 years from now, we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, more. They're still able to fit in wherever it is they fit in. So a good lesson from that too is just realizing that the standards and the conditions of today aren't necessarily going to be the standards and conditions of next year or future years. Maybe tomorrow, maybe yesterday, okay, but if you look future forward, especially with things that are just like pop music and stuff like that, there's always going to be somebody else that's just going to basically replace them in a sense. There'll always be a new whatever, but like if you're not trying to chase being like the new whatever and the first one, you could benefit more. And I remember from I think it was Lee Militier and Dan Kennedy mentioning too about how you don't ever want to like necessarily invent all the time and start from scratch, like, because that could be a quicker way to failure, and it could really destroy someone's ego and processes and stuff like that, because they're just so maybe money focused on today and now and what people are latching on to right now, and just wanting to be different and unique is fine, but like starting completely from scratch is kind of dangerous. Like, you do kind of want to adapt and borrow other frameworks and ideas and build off those and make it your own, versus just completely doing something that's like almost crazy and just hoping that people will latch on to it, which is fine. People do that. But if you're like an entrepreneur and you're a business person, you're probably going to be better off innovating or finding ways to improve something, or find out what it is that people are dissatisfied with, and then listen to them, and then give them the new and improved version of it. I mean, that's one way to go about it. But like, again, like 10, 20 years from now, we don't know what's going to stick. We don't know. I mean, we live in a world now where there's a lot of cancel culture things going on and stuff like that too. So we don't even know if the general consensus of what you're doing right now is going to even be appropriate 5, 10, 20 years from now. So even if you're doing something great, I mean, maybe there's other aspects of it that we could be talking about something completely different now, but I'm just saying that by looking that far ahead a little bit while you're currently doing something new is a good way to look at it, because you not only want to be able to fit in as a business 10, 20 years from now, but you want to still be able to do it. You want to still be able to do it, because that's part of the problem, where you see a lot of if we go back to music again, different kinds of music, different musicians, different music groups, a lot of times they just can't maintain that. Like think of somebody that plays like death metal music, right? If you're aware of that, like really screaming, screeching vocals and roars and stuff. And then you have really, really fast and technical instrumentation, like guitars and double bass and driving guitars and all that stuff. And which is great, it's powerful music and people love that stuff. But do you think those people are going to still be able to play that kind of music when they're in their 60s and 70s and 80s? I doubt it. Some, I mean, I'm sure some do, right? But it's something you got to think about too. Like, now if those, let's say those death metal musicians also maybe played other kinds of music too, just so they can stay playing music and get out of the genre box, right? They could just be like Ron Carter or Stanley Clark if we're talking about bass players, and the essence of being able to sustain being an artist and a musician 10 or 20 years. I mean, that might be more important than if your business fits in or not. Like, can you still do it 10 or 20 years from now? Or are you going to be so worn out or so disconnected that you're just going to have no choice but to, you know, take a step down, get off the stage, so to speak. So that's what today's test and lesson is about, is starting with asking the question, what will the world look like 10 or 20 years from now, right? We don't know. I mean, everything changes, and like every like sub niche and category, every couple days, weeks, months, years, let alone 10 or 20. Like just look at technology with computers. Imagine it, what some tech company, whatever they were concentrating on 10 or 20 years ago, if they were just like in that little box, like thinking about that, whatever that product is, how are they going to survive 10 or 20 years when technology is moving and they're still using megabytes, right? And everybody's on gigabytes and terabytes, So you got to consider the technology changing too, and that, like, your personality and thinking and relevancy are all going to be very important as you move forward. And like whatever it is you're doing right now will impact your future, but it won't necessarily be what it is you're doing in the future either. So just keep all that in mind. And you don't need to strive to be the first mover. You might find more advantages of being a last mover when, if you think about people that are first movers, they have a different set of ambitions and where they want to go and motivations. Maybe it might be financial reasons, or maybe they don't even know, they're just testing it out. But you could use their knowledge and their wisdom for your own business, and now you don't have to make the same mistakes. You see what I mean? You're not so jaded. You have a strong advantage, a very strong advantage if you think about it a little bit, being a last mover. You're just taking something that's already out there, people are familiar with, and you're just making a new and different and better version of that. And that is hey, maybe that could stick. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, whoever's watching, and I'll try to do more of these.